Hi everyone, today let's talk about the markets. Then we got a big week of earnings, so let's go over which ones we should be paying attention to for the upcoming week. And then we got the daily charts and weekly charts to go over for the major indicators. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this as well as whole portfolio overviews every single week, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So if you saw my video yesterday, you would know that the dollar did dip down, and there's no public declarations from the Japanese central bank, but it certainly seems like they might have stepped in to support their currency. There's not a lot to say here, so we'll just take a look at the charts. You can see we've been on this very steady, slow uptrend here in the US dollar yen, and then all of a sudden we hit right at 152 almost, and we had these huge legs down, something that we haven't seen in quite a while since all the way back here in September. It's some pretty large down moves here in September. Definitely seems like there might be some interference from the central bank here to support their currencies and help balance out the markets. Either way, we did see the dollar dip down because of this, and that was good for stocks on Friday. Moving over to earnings, nothing really of note here on Monday. Tuesday's a big day though. We got Apple on that day. 3M is a stock I've traded before. Chipotle, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Texas Instruments, UPS is a good one to pay attention to, and then we have Visa here as well. Looking at Wednesday, we got Boeing, Ford Motor, General Dynamics, Meta Platforms, and O'Reilly. Moving to Thursday, we have Apple. That's going to be the main one for Thursday. It's obviously the biggest company in the world, so it's good to pay attention to. We have Comcast that day as well. Honeywell, pretty decent sized company. MasterCard, McDonald's, Northrop Grumman, Overstock, and Pinterest are stocks I've traded before. Then we have Twitter just for the memes. And US Steel is good to pay attention to just for the direction of the overall economy. And then finally on Friday, the only one really of note here is ExxonMobil. If you like New Era Energy, that's that day as well, just to pay attention to some of those energy plays. Moving over to the charts, this is SPY on the daily chart. Looks like we have a fairly clear bottom here, at least for the short term, and we might get a continuation here on Monday into Tuesday. If we do get the pretty strong moves that I'm expecting, we should hit some decent resistance here around 387, maybe 390 here on SPY. At that point, I would expect this to fail. I don't think we're going to get a full retest of this higher level of resistance. I expect this to be a little bit shorter term rally and then a continuation down. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see we have this longer term trend line here, and we are right at that point. That's basically where we stopped. We also tested that same level of resistance here on October 18th, and then we gapped above that level before gapping right back down through that level. So this is a pretty well respected level. If we do get a move through here, as I do expect that we will, get into this 290 range, maybe 295 before we get rejected back down. And then I would expect we at least get a retest of this major trend line back down at maybe 273, 272 in terms of that range. So a nice little move up. In terms of the short term, if we get a push right through on Monday, hopefully we get a retest and a continuation into that range for the up move before we get the push back down, before the rally fails, and then we get a continuation back downwards. Looking at the Russell IWM, I do want to start on the 4-hour chart here. You can see we did break through this upper level of resistance. So we're potentially moving into this 178 range. Moving over to the daily chart, you can see that resistance right in that 178 range. It's the previous lows here for the beginning of September, which did mark a pretty deep bottom for that 4-day rally that we had here on the Russell. And that's my expectation. So push into this 178 to 180 level, and that should be the area where this rally fails. Then I would expect a continuation back to the downside where we should retest this longer level of support back down maybe at 152 or 153. Just to give you an idea of where that is, if this long-term trend going back to February of 2016, we tested it again here during COVID, where I would expect the bottom to be here for the Russell 2000. Quickly going through the ratios here, NASDAQ versus SPY, you can see we had a little bit of a bottom here. It looks like growth is going to be outperforming here over the short term. I expect a rally at least up into this resistance point. So for the next few days, it's going to be biased towards the NASDAQ. That same trend continues here for the NASDAQ versus the Russell. Had a decent bottom, retesting that support. And then I expect we should get a move higher, at least into the mid-range, if not retesting this highest level of resistance. And then lastly here, the SPY versus the Russell. Looks like SPY should be outperforming, at least for the next few days here. We did have a decent bottom for the SPY versus the Russell. We should come back up into this range, the previous resistance that we've tested several times here previously. Overall, though, pretty flat for the SPY versus the Russell. Moving over here to market breadth, you can see we did come all the way down into that 11 range. It's a pretty classic level that we've had here before. In fact, I'm going to put a trend line there. You can see we tested that here in June on those June lows. Hit that same level here in September before we got the rally up. Tested those here in 2018. Then if we go back here to 2011, same levels that we've hit previously. And the only time that we've really gone below this here is 2008. Obviously, the big crisis there. And then during COVID. So those huge major crises where we had fundamental risk to the economy versus a multiple decrease. The 1-day chart here, you can see we've had a couple of days of upside, not quite at that resistance point here. So I do expect this to continue to improve before we see that topping formation, something like we saw here. Maybe come up and halt at this line here, or we come up and retest that higher level of resistance, and then I would expect it to fail from there. And until we see this improve, I expect the downtrend to continue. Moving over to SPX divided by the M2 money supply. They must have changed the way that they did the charts here because I couldn't get numbers to appear, but looking at it on a percentage basis, you can see the last time that we hit a low at this point was here in 2018 on that down move, as well as during COVID. And we're in the same range that we were in 2017 and 2015. Below this point during the 2016 move down. And then we were way below, obviously, during the great financial crisis. So right now we're kind of in the middle of the range in terms of M2 money supply versus SPX. This is still a good chart to look at, as it would have helped you the top basically dead on here. We hit that same exact level pre-COVID before we had the big move down. And then right at the top here in November of 21 was at that same exact level in terms of SPX versus M2 money supply. So definitely a good chart to keep on your watch list and pay attention to where we are generally. Definitely not a terrible time to be buying the market, but also not super oversold. Next up here we have DXY. I expect this to continue downwards and get at least a retest of the 55 EMA here, which would be a couple points lower than we are. If we do get that move down, that should be good for stocks. Again, over the next day or two, that is my expectation. Moving over to TLT, we had a big gap down and then we had the doji. This does indicate to me that we should get a little bit of upward movement here in government bonds, 20+ year treasuries. We're also super oversold here on the RSI. If we do see a slowing of interest rates, that should be good for stocks and potentially get a retest of this trend line that we had here previously that has been dictating basically the slope of this overall down move. Then we kind of paired off of it here. So we had a big move down here, came back into that range, rallied slightly, and then a big move down. I would expect a similar move here. A reversion to the mean here on treasuries should be good for stocks. Moving over to JNK, another good stock to keep on your watch list for bonds. You can see we bottomed. We should get a move up to resistance, which should be good for stocks and specifically good for the NASDAQ, which is why we see the NASDAQ outperforming the other indices right now. Also, we have good momentum here on the RSI, and we did get just barely a green bar here on the MACD. So overall looking good for risk on moves over the next week. Lastly, here we have the VIX. We did get a rally up to that 3450 range, right in that same resistance area we've been in previously. Then we got a pretty decent rejection down. So we have this trend down now, and I expect to get into this 2650 to 2750 range. At that point, I expect we'll probably find some support, and that's when this move up should reverse. And that would be a good indicator of time to get out of the markets and then reassess where we're going from there. In terms of my accounts right now, I did just hit over 88K, which is pretty good for me. I've been slowly chipping away at these losses over the course of the year. My IRA might actually end up positive year to date, which would be great. Got another 2 months to get that turned around, but overall not terrible for a year that has been very tough trading. In terms of positions going into the next week, I'm still bullish here on LULU, just a $3 contract here for 285. And then I do have one put position here on the NASDAQ. And I do expect to increase that going into Monday. Let me know down in the comment section where you think the market is going over the next week. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.